I never thought a simple question about a scar could unravel everything I'd been hiding for the past 3 years. But there I was, lying on the bottom bunk of our cramped dorm room, shirt riding up from the summer heat, when Jake's fingers traced the raised line along my ribs. His touch was so gentle, so unexpected that I forgot to breathe. "How'd you get this one?" he asked, his voice low in the darkness. And just like that, the careful distance I'd maintained between us started crumbling. Let me back up a bit. My name's Owen, and I'm 22 years old. I go to a state university about 4 hours from where I grew up, studying environmental science because I've always felt more comfortable around trees than people. The scar Jake was asking about, it runs about 4 inches along my left rib cage, a silvery reminder of the summer I turned 15. But the story of how I got it is tangled up with a lot of other things I don't usually talk about. Things about who I am, who I've been afraid to be, and why sharing a dorm room with Jake Henderson for the past 8 months has been both the best and most torturous experience of my college career. Jake transferred in at the start of spring semester. Our previous arrangement had been random assignment, me and this guy Marcus, who was hardly ever around, always crashing at his girlfriend's place. I'd gotten used to having the room mostly to myself, which suited me fine. I'm not exactly the most social person. I like my routines, my quiet mornings with coffee and a book before class, my evening runs through campus when most people are at dinner. When housing services emailed to say I'd be getting a new roommate, I wasn't thrilled, but I figured it couldn't be worse than the revolving door of Marcus's random hookups, stumbling in at 3 a.m. Then Jake showed up on a Wednesday afternoon in January, and I realized I'd been very wrong about what worse could mean. Not worse in the way I'd expected, worse in the way that made my chest tight and my thoughts scattered. He was tall, maybe 6'1" to my 5'10", with dark hair that fell across his forehead and these impossibly green eyes that seemed to notice everything. He had an easy smile and moved with the kind of casual confidence I'd always envied. Within 10 minutes of meeting him, I knew I was in trouble. "Hey, you must be Owen," he'd said, extending his hand. His grip was warm and firm. "I'm Jake. Thanks for letting me crash your space mid-year. I know that's probably annoying." "It's fine," I'd managed, trying not to stare at the way his thermal shirt fit across his shoulders. "Welcome, I guess." That first month was an exercise in self-control I hadn't known I was capable of. Jake was just so casually, unconsciously physical. He'd clap me on the shoulder when he passed by, steal fries off my plate at the dining hall, flop onto my bed to show me something on his phone when his own bed was literally 3 feet away. He'd walk around in just his boxer briefs after showering, completely unself-conscious while I pretended to be deeply absorbed in whatever textbook was in front of me. I'd never lived in such close quarters with someone I was attracted to, and I had no idea how to handle it. I'd known I was gay since I was 14, but I'd never told anyone. Not my parents, not my older sister, not the handful of friends I'd accumulated over the years. I'd had exactly one kiss, with a guy I'd met at a college visit the summer before freshman year, in a bathroom at a rest stop on the interstate. It had been quick and furtive and filled with the kind of desperate longing that left me feeling hollow afterwards. Since then, nothing. I'd convinced myself it was easier this way, safer, to just keep that part of myself locked down until some undefined future when I'd be ready to deal with it. But Jake made me want things I'd been denying myself. He made me want to be brave. He studied architecture, and he'd stay up late working on designs, his desk lamp the only light in the room while I pretended to sleep. Sometimes I'd watch him through barely open eyes, the way he'd run his hands through his hair when he was frustrated, the way he'd lean back in his chair and stretch, his shirt riding up to reveal a strip of stomach. I memorized these small moments like they were something precious, something I could keep. We fell into an easy friendship, despite my internal chaos. Jake was funny and smart and genuinely interested in people in a way I'd never quite managed. He'd ask about my classes, my research project on watershed ecology, my morning runs. He introduced me to his friends from the architecture program, and suddenly I had a social life that extended beyond my roommate and a couple of study partners. We started having breakfast together most mornings, discovered we both liked old science fiction movies, spent Sunday afternoons at this coffee shop off campus where Jake would work on sketches and I'd read. It was nice. It was more than nice. It was the kind of friendship I'd always wanted but never quite achieved. And it was slowly killing me because every casual touch, every shared laugh, every moment of comfortable silence made me want more, made me want everything. The scar came up on a Friday night in late April. Finals were still a few weeks away, but the weather had turned warm, that first real taste of summer that makes everyone a little restless. We'd spent the day outside, Jake playing frisbee with some friends while I studied under a tree, then grabbed pizza for dinner. Back in our room, we'd both showered and changed into just shorts, the air conditioning in our building barely functional as usual. I was lying on my bunk, scrolling through my phone, and Jake was on his bed across from me, sketching in the notebook he always carried. The room was quiet, except for the scratch of his pencil and the distant sounds of people in the hallway. I'd pulled off my shirt because of the heat, which wasn't unusual. We'd both gotten comfortable enough around each other that modesty had mostly gone out the window months ago. "Can I ask you something?" Jake's voice cut through the quiet. "Sure," I said, not looking up from my phone. I heard him move, the creak of his bed frame, and then he was standing next to my bunk. "Sit up for a second." I did, confused, and that's when his hand reached out, fingers tracing along my left side. The scar. I'd honestly forgotten it was visible, forgotten that it might prompt questions. His touch sent electricity through my entire body, and I had to force myself to stay still, to breathe normally. "How'd you get this one?" he asked. His hand was still there, warm against my skin, and I could feel my heart hammering. I wondered if he could feel it too, if he had any idea what his touch did to me. "Skateboarding accident," I said, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. "When I was 15. "Skateboarding?" He sounded surprised. His fingers moved along the length of the scar, a feather-light touch that was making it very hard to think. "I didn't know you skated." "I don't anymore, not after that." He sat down on the edge of my bunk, his hand finally dropping away. I immediately missed the contact and hated myself for it. What happened? I'd never told anyone the full story. My parents knew the basics, the emergency room visit and the stitches, but not the context, not the why behind it. But something about the darkness of the room, the intimacy of the moment, the way Jake was looking at me with genuine curiosity and concern, it made me want to tell him, want to let him see a piece of me I'd kept hidden. "I was trying to impress someone," I said, settling back against the wall. Jake shifted to face me, one leg tucked under him, giving me his full attention. There was this skate park in my hometown, and I'd started going there that summer. I wasn't very good, but I was determined to learn. And there was this guy. I paused, testing the words, waiting for Jake to react. He just nodded, encouraging me to continue. He was maybe 17, 18, one of the regular skaters, really talented, and he was nice to me, showed me some basics, didn't make fun of how bad I was. I developed this massive crush on him, the kind of all-consuming thing you get at 15 when you don't really understand what you're feeling yet. Or maybe you do understand, but you don't have words for it. Jake was very still, watching me. Anyway, there was this ramp, not huge, but bigger than anything I'd tried. And one day he mentioned how cool it would be if I could drop in from it, so obviously I decided I had to do it, even though I had no business attempting it. I made it about halfway down before I completely lost control. Fell hard, right onto this metal edge. Split my side open pretty good. Jesus, Jake breathed. Yeah, 12 stitches. My parents freaked out. I never went back to that skate park. I traced the scar myself now, a habit I'd developed over the years. The guy visited me once while I was recovering, brought me a magazine and some candy. I was so embarrassed I could barely look at him. He moved away that fall for college and I never saw him again. Did he know, Jake asked quietly, that you were doing it to impress him? I don't think so. I was pretty good at hiding it. Hiding everything. I met Jake's eyes. I've always been good at that. There was a long moment of silence. Jake's expression was thoughtful, almost tender. That must have been lonely, he said finally. The observation hit me harder than I expected. Yeah, I admitted. It was. It is. Owen? He said my name like it meant something. Can I tell you something? My heart was racing again. Okay. I didn't transfer here just because of the architecture program. I mean, that was part of it, but not the main reason. He was picking at a thread on my blanket, not meeting my eyes now. I was at my old school with my best friend from high school. We'd been friends since we were kids, planned to room together the whole thing, and somewhere during first semester I realized I had feelings for him. Real feelings. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I told him over winter break. It went badly, really badly. He said he needed space, needed to not see me for a while, so I transferred. Started over somewhere he wasn't. Jake, I'm sorry. He looked up at me then, and there was something vulnerable in his expression I'd never seen before. The thing is, I told myself I wouldn't do it again. Wouldn't let myself fall for a straight guy. Wouldn't put myself in that position. But then I moved in here, and you were so quiet and careful and kind, and I thought, okay, this is fine. We'll be friends. I can handle that. My mouth was dry. And can you handle it? I don't know, he said honestly. Every day gets a little harder. Every time you smile at me, every time we stay up late talking about nothing, every time you exist in the same space as me, it gets harder to pretend I don't feel what I feel. I should have said something, should have told him that I understood exactly what he meant, that I'd been fighting the same battle for months. But the words stuck in my throat, years of hiding and fear keeping them trapped. Jake stood up, and for a horrible moment I thought he was going to leave, going to walk away from this conversation and the fragile thing we'd built. But instead, he just ran a hand through his hair, that gesture I'd memorized months ago. I'm going to go for a walk, he said. Clear my head. I shouldn't have said anything. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, I managed. He gave me a sad smile. I'll be back in a bit. The door closed behind him, and I sat there in the darkness, my heart pounding, my mind racing. He'd just laid himself bare, admitted feelings I'd been too afraid to acknowledge in myself, and I'd frozen. I'd let him walk out thinking his honesty wasn't reciprocated, that he'd made the same mistake twice. I thought about that 15-year-old kid at the skate park, so desperate to be seen, to be acknowledged, that he'd risked breaking his neck. I thought about all the years since then, hiding and pretending and telling myself it was easier this way. I thought about Jake's fingers on my scar, the gentleness of that touch, the way he'd looked at me like I was something worth knowing, and I realized I was so tired of being afraid. I pulled on a shirt and shoes and went after him. Our dorm was on the edge of campus, near the arboretum where I did my morning runs. I found him there, sitting on a bench overlooking the small pond, his elbows on his knees, head in his hands. Jake. He looked up, surprised. Owen, what are you doing here? I sat down next to him, close enough that our shoulders touched. I got the scar trying to impress a guy I liked, and I've spent the last 8 months falling for my roommate, and I'm terrified, but I'm more terrified of letting you think you're alone in this. His breath caught. Owen? I've never told anyone before about being gay. You're the first person I've said it out loud to. My hands were shaking. I don't know how to do this, any of this, but I know I don't want you to walk away thinking I don't feel the same way you do. Jake turned to face me fully, and there were tears in his eyes. Say that again. I like you. God, Jake, I've liked you since the day you moved in. Maybe before that, maybe from the first moment I saw you. And I'm sorry I didn't say it in the room. I've spent so long hiding that I forgot how to be honest. He laughed, a wet, overwhelmed sound. We're both idiots. Yeah, probably. And then he was kissing me, his hand cupping my face, and it was nothing like that desperate encounter in a rest stop bathroom years ago. This was soft and slow and full of something that felt like promise, like possibility. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I can't believe we wasted 8 months, he whispered. We didn't waste them. We were building something. We just didn't know what it was yet. We sat there by the pond for a long time, talking about everything we'd been too afraid to say. Jake told me about his friend from high school, about the fear and rejection and the courage it took to start over. I told him about growing up feeling different, about the loneliness of keeping such a big part of yourself hidden, about the small moments over the past months when I'd almost been brave enough to reach for him. What happens now? I asked eventually. I don't know, Jake said, but I'd like to find out. With you, if you want that. I want that. I'm probably going to be bad at it, at being open, being in a relationship. I've never done this before. He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. We'll figure it out. Together. Walking back to our dorm room that night, hand in hand in the darkness, I felt something shift inside me. The fear was still there. The uncertainty, the voice that said I should be careful, should protect myself. But it was quieter now, drowned out by something stronger. Hope. Possibility. The simple, radical act of being seen and choosing not to hide. That was 3 months ago. We're still roommates, though now Jake's stuff has migrated to my side of the room, and we've pushed our beds together into one larger sleeping space. We haven't told everyone yet. My parents still don't know, though I've been working up the courage to call them. Jake's been patient with me, understanding that coming out is a process, that I need to move at my own pace. But we told his friends from the architecture program, and then mine from environmental science. We hold hands walking across campus. We kiss goodnight without checking if anyone's watching. Small acts of bravery that are slowly teaching me what it means to live openly, to claim space for who I am and who I love. Sometimes I trace that scar on my ribs and think about the kid who got it, so desperate to be seen that he'd hurt himself trying. I wish I could tell him it gets better, that one day someone will trace that scar with gentle fingers and ask how he got it, and that question will open a door to everything he's been afraid to want. I wish I could tell him that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It just means doing it anyway. Jake is lying next to me right now as I think about all this, his head on my chest, his breathing even and slow. In a few minutes, we'll get up and make breakfast, and then we'll spend the day studying for midterms. Our routine as comfortable and familiar as it was before, but richer now, fuller. Tonight we'll probably end up here again, tangled together in the darkness. And he might trace that scar again, and I might tell him I love him. Words I've been practicing in my head for weeks now. Or maybe I'll wait. Maybe I'll let the moment build. Let the certainty of it settle into my bones. Because I have time now. We have time. And that's the most incredible thing of all. To know that this isn't just a moment I'm stealing, a secret I'm keeping. This is my life, unfolding in real time, messy and imperfect and more beautiful than I ever imagined it could be. The scar on my ribs is still there, a silvery reminder of the summer I turned 15, and tried to be someone I wasn't to get someone to notice me. But now when I look at it, I think about Jake's fingers tracing it in the darkness, about the conversation that followed, about the courage it took for both of us to stop hiding. I think about how sometimes our scars are maps, leading us to exactly where we need to be. And I think about how grateful I am that Jake asked me how I got it, that simple question that changed everything. Because in answering honestly, in letting him see me, I finally learned how to see myself.